So there was a point after the loss in Northern Illinois where I didn't think there was any chance that Notre Dame would right the ship, run the table, and make a run in the college football playoff. They've proved me wrong so far, but they need to finish strong, and Greg Flammang and I are confident that they will. Stick around for our reasons why, plus a whole lot more on today's Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and I'm pumped to have you here with me on Thursday, November 21st, and thanks for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. I'd really appreciate it, though, if you took a quick second to hit that subscribe button, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Quick reminder before we get rolling here, being that tomorrow is Friday, we are going to be doing another mailbag on the show, so get those questions in if you want to be featured in tomorrow's episode. As always, you can submit yours in the YouTube comments or send them to me on X at Locked On Irish or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. As for today, Greg Flammang from Irish Sports Daily makes his return to the show, and I had a lot of fun catching up with him. He's been a great friend of the program since the Sons of Saturday days, so it was great to have him back, and we covered a lot on today's show, from our nerves about the USC game next week, which we will both be in attendance for, to the development of Xavier Watts and Riley Leonard, how Leonard Moore's true freshman season stacks up with Benjamin Morrison's, plus we break down what's ahead this weekend when the Irish take on the Army Black Knights. I really enjoyed this one. I hope you do too. Let's bring in Greg. All right, Craig, as we sit here today, the Irish are 9-1. They're ranked 6th in the CFP top 25, and they're in prime position to host a playoff game so long as they take care of business against Army and USC. As you might recall, I did not think they would be in this position, and I may or may not have declared the season over after the loss to NIU, but now I feel pretty confident about where things are at. So what's your confidence level in this team's ability to finish the season strong?
You have to think my confidence level is high. You have to think they are going to get it done just based on their run of recent performances. You're certainly not alone in your doubt after the NIU loss. On my morning after recap show, I declared no faith in Marcus Freeman anymore. I said the only thing we know for sure is that they will lose again. That was what I said. That was the only thing.
They still could, knock on wood.
And look, when you make those statements, all caveats that you're happy to be proven wrong. I think that we have, or when I say we, I think Notre Dame, like as fans, like we have seen the team continue to progress. And I think a point that was made by my associate, Jamie Uyama, on Power Hour this week is that I think Notre Dame is kind of beyond Marcus Freeman needs to show them clips of the NIU game anymore, right? Like they're beyond that. It's no longer about blowing it. Now it's about going out there and actually taking advantage of the situation that they have put themselves in, right? They have played good football. They have destroyed the teams that they have played that have been put in front of them. They have an opportunity again this week against Army, and then to go to USC at the end of the year. They are playing as well as anyone in the country right now. So just based on the quality of play that they've shown offensively and defensively, they've shown it all year defensively. They've made great strides offensively. They are one of the hot teams in college football right now, and it's because of their play, not because of their name. They have not squeaked by these games. They've been dominating teams, and so I think that should give the team and fans confidence that they can continue this.
They really are, to the point where a 35-14 win over a Power 4 team doesn't even feel all that satisfying, and I think that's a good place to be for this team. I've also appreciated Marcus Freeman's messaging this week. He's referred to Army as their toughest test this season, really since that Texas A&M game. So I hope that translates to the rest of the team and they're focused and ready to go for this game. But what's your biggest hang up about this group? Like, what's preventing you from buying all the way into the point where you're looking at flights to Atlanta for a potential national championship?
A couple things. One is there's been a lot of empty possessions on offense in the last couple of games. This last week they had five possessions, I think, in the first quarter it was, and they managed the 7 points, which was basically off the opening kickoff, right? And not just that, but they had a bunch of 3 and outs in there too. Like they could not, and that happened a little bit against Florida State. It happened. They got bogged down late in the second half against Georgia Tech as well. So this offense has gone multiple possessions and a lot of time on in the game clock, not moving the ball, not producing points, right? So that is concerning just in itself in terms of when you're talking about a team's long range ceiling, things like that. You want to see more efficiency from your offense when you're given a bunch of possessions like that. They had 10 offensive possessions in the first half. And basically they had to run a points. When I say first half, I mean against Virginia. They had a run of points, when Virginia started turning the ball over, right? So that's something they want to improve on, hopefully against Army and then USC as well. And then just on that, there has been a lack of explosiveness in the passing game. That is my biggest hang up with this team, specifically on offense. They haven't been able to get over on teams explosively when they're trying to throw the ball. Unfortunately, they had a very long pass play for a touchdown that was called back by a penalty on Pat Coogan for illegal hands to the face. But it was nice to see anyway, right? It was nice to see that was in the bag for the offense. They need to produce more of those things. Just for me to consider, like, oh yeah, they're going to make a deep run in the playoff. You need to be more explosive.
That play to Jalen Harrison was such a bummer because it really was such a perfect pass. Hits Jalen Harrison in stride. He had gotten a ton of separation from the defender, and that was the first time all season we were like, whoa, there is that speed from Jalen Harrison that we heard about when Notre Dame picked him up in the transfer portal. But I want to talk about Army for a little bit here because as I've studied them more in the lead up to this game, I think they do some things that can stress you. To your point about Notre Dame's offense having too many empty possessions, if they do that against Army, this will be a close game because they're probably not going to have that many offensive possessions in this game. But I also feel like their success as an undefeated can mostly be attributed to a very weak schedule. They're still a good team and they should be treated as such. But when you evaluate them, what do you think is real and what do you find is a bit misleading about their success?
Well, you mentioned the schedule, right? It's one of the worst in college football. So there's that, right? So that I think that in itself is, I don't want to say misleading, but it's just something that just kind of hangs over everything they've done. They have not played good teams. I think what's real is they run the option much closer to the way Navy used to run the option, where it's like they're not necessarily looking for explosives, right? They're very fine to take 4 plays to get a first down and get 10, 11 yards and move on with their day, right? They do want to control the ball, and unlike Navy this year. So they want to hang on to that. And if Notre Dame I think Notre Dame has benefited this year from teams that are able to run for 3 or 4 yards, but they don't want to continue to do that. They can't help it. They want to be more modern and they want to throw the ball and they want to push the ball down the field passing. That is exactly what Notre Dame wants, right? Notre Dame wants teams to try to throw on them. They have the best pass efficiency defense in the nation, like literally number 1. So Army's not like that. Army will say, no, if you give us 4 yards on first down, we will continue to run the ball for 4 yards on every single play right into the end zone. You're not going to get the ball. They have a better defense than Navy has. They have, on paper, right? Now, again, that's caveated by the fact that they haven't played an offense anywhere near Notre Dame's capability. They haven't played a defense anywhere near Notre Dame's capability. But they will do the thing where it's like Notre Dame, from an EPA per rush standpoint, they are not one of the top teams in the country. Army wants to exploit that. So that's the thing. Notre Dame has to get them into negative plays. A no gain is a negative play for Army's offense, the way that they run their offense. And so that's what Notre Dame has to do. They cannot do this thing where it's 3 or 4 yards every clip, because they will just do that all the way down the field and into the end zone.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how Al Golden schemes up his defense going up against a more traditional triple option offense in Army than what they did against Xavier, because they had Horvath in hell. Granted, he was dealing with a thumb injury, and he was clearly not ready. I mean, he was just dropping the ball in the end zone at one point. I have a lot of respect for Bryson Daly. I think he's a really good player. So I think this is going to be a tight game for a little bit there, maybe even into the second half, depending on how Army's offense is able to control the ball. But how do you see this game playing out?
I think just generally the way I see it is Look, you've played all season. You haven't seen anything like the physicality of Notre Dame. You haven't seen anything like the speed of Notre Dame. The way that they attack ball carriers. I think that's the difference. I think early in the year, you could get over on the linebackers a little bit. Like we saw NIU do that a little bit. Granted, it was only for 16 points, but I think you could, NIU's offensive line was able to move Notre Dame up front a little bit. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I just think those linebackers have evolved. I think they've become better players. I think Gabe Rubio is a big part of this team. I think Riley Mills is playing better than he has. I think the D-line rotation is playing better. Like, I think the fact that they've lost Jordan Botelho and Boubacar Traore is mitigated by the fact that Junior Tulihalamaka is very good against the run. He's been very good against the option. So it's like those lack of pass rush from those guys is mitigated by the fact that the thing that Junior Tulihalamaka does will work really well against Army, right? I think Jalen Sneed has been a very good option player for Notre Dame. And so that was kind of like some of these teams, what is his role? Against an Army team, against an option team, he seems to do very, very well. So he's going to be another factor. KVA's been playing great. Drake Bowen's been playing great. You have safeties like Xavier Watts and Adon Schuler who have just been lights out tackling and attacking the line of scrimmage. So I think it's going to be very difficult for them. And offensively for Notre Dame against Army, again, they have not seen anything close to what Notre Dame can do. Riley Leonard is such a big problem for these types of teams. We saw Navy could not handle him running the ball. Army is a better defense than Navy, but the problems still exist. So I just think, like you said, I could see Army having success early in the game just because a lot of teams have it against Notre Dame. But over the course of the game, I just think Notre Dame's going to outlast them. They're going to out-talent them. And it's just, I expect, Notre Dame to cover, frankly.
Greg will be right back with us in a second to break down how Xavier Watts has taken his game to another level this season after his historic year in 2023. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about the perfect gift for this holiday season. Do you want to celebrate with and stay connected to people who are far away? Do your loved ones live far away but wish they could be close to you? We have got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. Plus, you can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. No account or subscription required. And you can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. It is the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. They'll feel so much more connected to you. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/college. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So it's Thursday. We got Thursday Night Football tonight. AFC North battle between the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rivalry game. The Browns have been terrible as of late. The Steelers are surging, but I'm actually not going to pick the spread in this one. We are going to take the under in this game. The over-under is 36.5 right now on FanDuel. That is a very, very low number, and I think it's going to be lower than that in the actual game. You know why? Because the Browns' offense is terrible. The Steelers' defense is really good, and I think that they're going to be in control of this game, and I don't really expect the Steelers to put up a ton of points, so I'm taking the under 36.5. And for more, just visit FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I agree with a lot of what you said. The physicality point is certainly there. I feel very good about where Notre Dame's defense is at. And when Notre Dame played Navy, they just pummeled them, man. As they have done so many times to different teams this year, it feels like whenever Notre Dame is playing a team, that opponent has a bunch of guys go down, not with like, long-term injuries, but they're just getting beat up out there. And I think that's starting to show because I had Tim Murray from VSiN look this up. Notre Dame, the opponents are 0-8 against the spread and 2-6 overall the week after playing Notre Dame. So I do feel like there's like a legitimate Notre Dame hangover effect with these teams. I think that's going to show itself against Army. Notre Dame will pull away in the second half and win, in my mind, by a score of 35-10. But you mentioned Xavier Watts and his development this year. I feel like he's having a much better season than he did last year, even though he won the Nagurski Award for the top defensive player in the country. Even though he doesn't have quite the eye-popping interception numbers, you played the position. Where have you seen the most growth in his game from last year to this year?
Well, I think the tackling is one where, he didn't have a ton of holes in his game last year, but the tackling, I think, has been a lot better this year. I think in man coverage, he's been just a very key player for them. It was not something they did a ton with him last year. Like, most of his work was done either on tight ends up the seam or as a robber player. They don't use him as the robber as much this year. That's usually Rod Hurd, or it's usually a Don Schuler. They don't use him in that space as much in 2024. So I think in man coverage and his tackling, he's just been used there, and he's been lights out. I mean, he hasn't given up a touchdown this year. He's essentially mistake free, especially from an assignment point of view. And I don't think people really credit that enough when they talk about Notre Dame's defense. We see busts in the secondary from other teams all the time. We see misalignments. We see them just getting out leveraged, and we simply don't see that from Notre Dame. And I think there's so much of that goes to Xavier Watts and getting guys in position. When you have, people talk about Leonard Moore coming into the lineup for Ben Morrison and that going seamlessly. When you have someone like Xavier Watts making sure everyone is doing the thing that they're supposed to do, the types of coverages that Notre Dame is in, the varied coverage that Notre Dame is in, the fact that they are always doing the thing that the play call is asking of them is a credit to someone like Xavier Watts, who, if you watch the game and only watch Xavier Watts, the number of things that he's doing pre-snap to get guys lined up, to make checks, to make sure that all the motions are accounted for, that is on his plate. And so that is the leadership that you have seen from Xavier Watts this year, and I think is off the charts. And not just that, but his production is there too, right? He has 4 interceptions this year. He's forcing fumbles. He's recovering fumbles. He's breaking up passes. I mean, from what he was, from a player who was on scout team wide receiver to becoming the defensive player of the year and probably a 2-time first team All-American. It's just unbelievable. It's I don't want to say unprecedented, but it's not something you definitely expect. That's for sure.
It's special, man. It's your point about getting everyone in the right place and handling everything that there is to handle pre-snap. This is also one of, if not the most complex defenses in all of college football. You hear it all the time from talking heads, especially when they're evaluating Notre Dame players in draft prep. I remember Dan Orlovsky talking about how Notre Dame was able to shut down Caleb Williams last year. And he's like, this is an NFL defensive scheme. There's a lot of stuff that Notre Dame is doing that nobody else is doing. And then for Xavier Watts to be in total control of what he has to do as a safety is hard enough. Then you add in the fact that he's accounting for a bunch of other people as well, including a lot of young linebackers sometimes if Jack Kaiser's not out there on the field. It's really, really special stuff. But I also want to ask you about Leonard Moore, because I'm not prepared to say Leonard Moore is going to be better than Benjamin Morrison long term. I think that we just became so used to his dominance out there at corner that we kind of took him for granted because no one was throwing to him, so he wasn't getting as many interceptions as he did when he was a freshman and teams actually were testing him. But based on what you've seen so far from Moore this season, where do you think his game is at right now relative to where Benjamin Morrison was at this point during his freshman season?
So it's a little bit hard to gauge just because I feel like since he's been inserted into the lineup as the true starter, we haven't seen a ton of real good passing teams, right? Georgia Tech didn't have Haynes King to play. So, but he did make a good play in that game, right? So he's been solid ever since we've seen him in the lineup. He started against Louisville. He played that whole game. They were 6 of 7 throwing against him in that game, although there wasn't for a ton of yards. He did get up a touchdown. But those were the some of the best wide receivers he's going to see this year. I think USC is going to be a really good gauge for him because USC's got some good players at wideout. They can throw the ball. So that's going to be a good test. Like, that's the thing about Ben Morrison is, like, we know the totality of his freshman season, right? And so we can, that's kind of the gauge. We don't know the totality of Leonard Morris at this point. Ben Morrison had that huge run at the end of the year where he was intercepting passes all over the place, right? Like, maybe against Army, yeah, Leonard Moore has a huge game, or against USC, Leonard Moore has 2 interceptions, right? We don't know. But what I'm seeing from him is I'm seeing he's assignment sound. He's making plays on the ball. His ball skills are very good. He's been very aggressive as a tackler. When they ask him to blitz, they blitz off the corner. In this game, he hit the quarterback. It was a perfect blitz. It was a perfect hit on the quarterback. He broke up a play on 3rd and 7, right? So everything they've asked him to do, they have also asked Ben Morrison to do. And that is probably like the biggest compliment for Leonard Moore at this point. It's not that he's done everything perfect or he's been tested or whatever. It's that the defense has not changed one bit when they brought in Leonard Moore. What they asked of Ben Morrison, they are asking of Leonard Moore, and he's come through, right? We'll see how it goes in this game. We'll see how it goes against USC. USC is going to be a very good test. Again, they can throw the ball. They've got good wide receivers out there. So that's going to be, but like, from a so far standpoint, Leonard Moore has not shown any type of drop off from what Notre Dame expects from the boundary this year.
I will ask you about USC in a second because I do want to get to that game, but you make a great point about Leonard Moore's tackling. I think that's the most encouraging thing about it because, let's be honest, a lot of defensive backs out there, not necessarily at Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a very physical brand with their DBs, but they don't love tackling, especially true freshman quarterbacks, and that is certainly not the case with Leonard Moore. Long gone are the days of Gary Gray or some of those other quarterbacks back in the day where you were just happy if they made a tackle, let alone many tackles. But let's flip it over to the offense because this is a Notre Dame podcast. I have to ask you about Riley Leonard. And at this point, I feel like the fan sentiment about Riley Leonard can be as divisive as a presidential election. My stance has been made pretty clear on this podcast. I think he's a good quarterback, and if Notre Dame were to make a run at this thing, he is going to be one of the main reasons why. So what is your Riley Leonard thesis as we sit here today?
I mean, it's clearly gotten better, right? Like, I think that like we can easily say that whatever the problems we had with him coming out of NIU, right? Like where he blew the game. I think even against Purdue, like that wasn't a great performance. He didn't have to have a great performance, right?
Yeah. He still did have over 130 rushing yards.
Right, he had 130
but you're right.
But like,
you are
the
right.
question
you are
was
right.
passing, right? And I think the way that the Miami of Ohio game started, people were very down on him, right? Like that was ugly.
Bad.
That was ugly.
I think you and I were both on the same page. We both were like, it might be time to pull him.
Yeah. And so I think when you look at where he was and where he is today, much different player, right? So I think the previous player is like gone, right? And now we're kind of honing in on, some of the deep ball stuff. Like there's too many situations where he'll throw the ball and the receiver doesn't really have a chance to make a play. Like I'm thinking of 3rd down at the goal line or near the goal line before they missed the field goal with Yoakum. Again, when you're up 35-0 or 35-7 or whatever it is, right? Like this is where we are. But that type of situation where you throw the ball to Mitchell Evans on a corner route, the ball's not anywhere close to him, and he doesn't even have a chance to make a play on that, right? Like those are the opportunities that you don't want to miss on. There's another one where there's a deep ball to Bo Collins. So if you're going to throw the goal ball, then you got to give him a chance. You're throwing it somewhere where you're not even giving him that opportunity. I do want to point out though, like in terms of his completion percentage, he's completing 64.5% of his passes. Okay. Sam Hartman completed 63% of his passes last year. His average depth of target is basically in his first 4 games, right? Or his first 5 games, excuse me. Average depth of target, 5.6, 7.8, 5.1, 8.8, 5.7, right? Now, those are low numbers, right? Everything was dinky kind of dunky. Since then, against Stanford, 11 yards average depth of target. Georgia Tech, 7. Navy, 10.5. Florida State, 12.6. Virginia, 7.7. Now you're getting closer to where it's like you're pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. Another thing that we should note, 16 drops for Notre Dame this year of Riley Leonard passes, which is a good number, right? That's a big number. His adjusted completion percentage, which takes drops into account, 75.6. Now, I'm not suggesting he's a 76% passer. What I'm saying is when the drops are added, right? And every team has drops. So every quarterback's adjusted completion percentage is going to be higher than the normal one. He's been more accurate than I think people kind of think. But they do need to push the ball downfield a little bit more. They do have to do that, right? So I think that's something. And I do want to point out, I think the increased efficiency of Jaden Greathouse and in particular Jaden Harrison are playing a very big role in the way that Riley Leonard has kind of improved over the last couple of weeks, right, or few games. Jaden Harrison, they're 15 of 18 throwing it to him, okay, for 199 yards and 1 touchdown. So that's over 10 yards per attempt thrown to Jaden Harrison.
Yeah, it should be more.
Yeah, since Jaden Greathouse, since the Miami of Ohio game, Jaden Greathouse got off the slow start. People are asking, what's the problem with Jaden Greathouse? What's the problem with Jaden Greathouse? 16 of 19 throwing it to him, just the 1 touchdown. But there's over, I think it was 246 yards throwing the ball to Jaden Harris. So that's a Jaden Greathouse. So that's another player that's over 10 yards per attempt. They've been very efficient throwing the ball at Jaden Greathouse, very efficient throwing the ball to Jaden Harrison. Those two players have seen their roles increase. That's going to be interesting to track over the next couple of weeks here. If they can get those guys going, it's been necessary because Bo Collins has fallen off a little bit. Mitchell Evans is starting to get better. So that's something to track as the season goes on, throwing the ball to Jaden Greathouse and to Jaden Harrison.
Absolutely. I'm not really sure what's been going on with Bo Collins because he had such a great start to the season. Then after that Georgia Tech game, these last 3 games have been pretty disappointing, although he did have that touchdown catch against Navy, only had 1 catch for 15 yards against Florida State and 1 catch for 16 yards against Virginia. And he leads the team right now with 5 drops. Should have been another one as well, but it was called back for a penalty. So I'm kind of conflicted with the passing game because, yes, I do think Riley Leonard has to be more accurate. He has to make better decisions. And the one thing I've been saying all year about Riley Leonard is his misses are loud, so they feel a lot worse because they're not even close. Like that deep ball he threw to Jordan Faison that ended up with the band, like that wasn't great. But overall, I still think he's been really good for the Irish as of late. Now, another position that's been really good for Notre Dame is the running backs. We know about Jeremiah Love. He's one of the best running backs in the country. But Aeneas Williams' emergence has been interesting to me because I think he's a really good player. What he's doing as a true freshman is impressive, especially in pass pro and as a receiver. I didn't really expect him to be a solid option in the pass game out of the backfield. But with his emergence comes less carries for Jadarian Price. I think a lot of fans are wondering why hasn't he been more involved. It has been feast or famine with him a lot this season. He's either breaking off really great runs or just getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage. So what do you make of the running back situation and how these different guys are being used? Because they're still being effective, but you've just got a lot of talent in that room, and there's really only one running back on the field for the vast majority of the time.
Yeah, I think, what we've seen is Dylan McCullough wants to use 3. He likes Aeneas Williams in the role that he has, and that's just how it's going to be. Like, I don't think that they're not going to use Jadarian Price as in the passing game as much. They will throw the ball with him. It's not like they won't. But if Notre Dame is in a 3rd and long or a 2nd and long or whatever it might be, they're going to go with Aeneas Williams. And look, they're 7 of 8 throwing him to him this year for 86 yards. So when they throw to him, it's been effective, right? So it's hard to, discount his role. Like he had a long third and short catch, a long catch against Florida State on the opening drive where Notre Dame went and scored on that. He had an impromptu kind of Riley Leonard scrambling out, and he finds Aeneas Williams on the run, and he makes good yards after catch on that as well. So when they are giving Aeneas Williams the ball, he has been productive. He's been very good in short yardage, right? He doesn't have some of the failures that like Jabron Payne had last year in his 3rd down role. He doesn't have that. So it's just the fact of the matter is like, this is what his role is. He's been good at it, right? So it's hard to say, why is he in there? He's been effective when they've given him the ball. So it just is what it is. For Jadarian Price, he's just going to have to make the most of his touches in the running game and whatever he can get in the passing game as well. Like you look at Aeneas Williams, 7 of 8 catching the ball. Jadarian Price, they're 2 of 3 throwing him the ball for 3 yards. They've been a lot more effective throwing the ball to Aeneas Williams than Jadarian Price this year. Some of that's opportunity, but look, if he's shown that in practice, then that's what it is.
Right, and another layer to this is the fact that Riley Leonard is taking up some carries as well. I know fans don't want to hear it, but he has been extremely effective as a runner this year, and he's more consistent than Jadarian Price. I mean, he has 641 rushing yards. He's going to come up short probably to your 1,000-yard mark that you predicted before the year. That actually came closer than I thought it would. He also has 13 rushing touchdowns. So when you have Love, Leonard, Price, Williams, that's just a lot of options in the backfield. It's a good problem to have, but unfortunately, some stats can suffer for individual players. But last question before we let you go here. As a resident Southern California guy, like this game next week, even though USC has been struggling all year, the stakes are always going to be higher, especially when you're surrounded by USC fans. So if Notre Dame does beat Army, how nervous are you going to be about a game against a mediocre at best USC team in the Coliseum that will make or break the Irish playoff hopes?
Yeah, I'll be pretty nervous, honestly. Because Notre Dame, it's just there's a history of them not playing the best in LA at the end of the year. And look, I think, I mean, if USC is to lose to UCLA this week, then that could change kind of how I feel about things. But I just look at USC and some of their offensive metrics, especially, they're pretty good, right? They're not a terrible team. They've kind of got some good team, bad record vibes going on. And the thing is like while they've dropped a bunch of games to some teams that you shouldn't, right? Like Minnesota shouldn't be losing to, Maryland shouldn't be losing to. They lost to they lost to Michigan the way they did. They lost to Penn State the way they did. You can't be losing these games, but the thing is they've been much better at home. So that's a fact. And the other part is every single one of these losses, they're close games. They're not getting blown out of these games. You know, there hasn't not been one game where a team just whipped them. And so look, I think the game, however it turns out, I think it's going to be close. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Notre Dame in that, like it's a truly win and you're in. It's an elimination game for Notre Dame. If that game is close in the fourth quarter, USC's lost games where they're winning in the fourth quarter, right? If USC is winning in the fourth quarter of their game next week, that is going to be nervous times for everybody, right? So that's kind of where my mind is. They don't get blown out. They play in close games. It's just that's what the situation is going to be, and I just want everyone to kind of be ready for that. Like it's probably not going to be a blowout in Notre Dame's favor. You know, whether they win or lose, it's a different that's a different topic, but it's going to be closer, and I think people need to be ready for that.
It's probably not going to be a blowout, and it's probably not going to be a lot of fun either. I'm very nervous about this game. To your point about USC going up against UCLA, if they do lose this weekend, then they're 5-6 on the year. They'd be fighting for bowl eligibility against Notre Dame. And I don't even know how many college football players even care about going to a bowl at all at this point in the way that the college football structure is set up. But yeah, man, I'm nervous about that one. You're going to be there, right?
I'm going to be there, yeah.
I will be there as well, sweating it out. It should be a fun game. We still don't know the time for that one yet, but I think so much about that potential game where it's like Notre Dame's 10-1 trying to get in the playoff. It's going to feel so similar to 2018 and 2012. And those were not very good USC teams. And Notre Dame traveled to LA, faced them. And you talk about the 2018 game all the time. I love your analysis, like about how they were playing walk-ons in that game on defense and Notre Dame still couldn't move the ball. Like I just have a feeling it's going to look a lot like that one all over again.
It could. And I don't want part of that. I hated that game. I did not like watching it. I did not like I was so nerve-wracked for that one. So oh man, I cannot imagine that type of thing, but it could happen. Like it could be that type of game. And so I just think people got to be ready for that.
When was the last time Notre Dame blew out a USC team on the road?
2000. They won 38-21.
That's a long time. That's a long
I mean,
time.
it depends what you consider blowing out, right? Like, I mean, that was
17, that's not,
17
that's
is, I
a
mean,
comfortable enough win.
That game wasn't particularly close in the fourth quarter. Like, there were no nervous moments in the second half of that game. There definitely were in 2012. Then they obviously didn't win there between 2002 and 2010. The 2010 game was close. So 18 was close, 16 was a loss, 14 was a loss.
Yep. All right. Well, this has been great, Greg. Hopefully the Irish win this weekend. They win again next week, and then I see you after the game, and we can just breathe a collective sigh of relief. You can find Greg at Irish Sports Daily. Also follow him on X at Greg2126. Thanks so much for the time, brother. Let's do it again soon.
For sure, man.
Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Personally, I love PrizePicks because I'm able to play out here in California, so it's definitely my favorite, and you could download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. That is going to do it for today's episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow morning with another Friday mailbag before the Irish take on Army. So consider this your last call to get those mailbag questions in. Also, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to the podcast. If you liked what you saw today, please like this video below. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, or if you're listening to the pod and you liked what you hear, please rate the show 5 stars and leave us a review as well. And I'm going to see you on Friday.